Greg Hamlin here from Blues Guitar Unleashed. Welcome and thanks for joining me today in this video. Going to kind of start, I'll say, a series on what I call modern blues soloing. And what I mean by modern blues soloing is if you are kind of fascinated by, I'll say, some of the new crop of blues players. Now, some of these guys are not new. Robben Ford, Larry Carlton, obviously been around for a long, long time. But Matt Schofield, Josh Smith, there are a lot of other new blues players that are sort of taking elements of, maybe just a touch of jazz, not like super crazy jazz, but that sensibility, and adding it to the blues vocabulary, and it creates a really, really fascinating sound. It's a sound I personally really, really enjoy and I use a lot. So I'm very familiar with it. And so what I wanted to kind of do to sort of ease you into the idea, a lot of people think that it's going to be really, really difficult. And I want to show you that it's really not. There's a couple of fairly simple things that you can do that will really, add some melody. And really that's kind of what it's all about. These jazz sensibilities are more melody or line driven than licks like we commonly do in the blues. At the end of the day, it's pretty much the same thing, but the jazz melodies definitely have sort of, a classic jazz sensibility. It's very pleasant to listen to. They tend to follow the chords more, and they just have a really, really great sound. So I want to show you a couple of ways that we can sort of, weave those in to what you might already be doing. Now, I am going to explain the theory behind what I'm doing, at least briefly. You don't have to follow it. You can you can do that when I talk about the theory stuff. Just wait and it'll go away. You don't have to know. When I kind of explain how this works, if you want to know, great. If you don't want to know, don't worry about it. I'm going to kind of say what the rule is, and you can just use the rule. You don't have to know why it works. You don't have to. You can just accept it. I often do that, okay? So what we're going to talk about first is a little bit of harmony. So if we were playing a blues and we were in A, we have an A7 chord, right? Well, anytime we have a seventh chord, we need to treat it as a 5. Okay, so the rule is that if A is a 5 chord, that means that B is a 6, C sharp is a 7, D is the 1, E is the 2, F sharp is the 3, G is the 4. Okay? Again, you don't have to know why, you can just believe me on this one. And what we're going to use is we're going to borrow the arpeggios from the E minor, which is the 2 of this 5, and the G major. And in fact, it makes a G major 7, which is the 4 to this 5. So in the first lick that we're going to come up with, we're going to borrow an arpeggio from the E minor 7, and the second lick we're going to borrow an arpeggio from the 4 chord, which is G major 7. Now, all you have to know is that you can do that. Okay, given any chord, right? There's the root, there's a fifth away, which is the 2. You can play a minor 7 arpeggio off of that note. You can also play a major 7 arpeggio off of the note a whole step below. Or I bring it up an octave. And I'm not even playing like some super, I'm not playing anything like super crazy or big. It's going to be 1 octave. It's really not going to be that big of a deal. But you're going to see that what it's going to do is it's going to sort of bring forth notes that are not the normal ones. They're not outside, they're not out of key, but they're the notes that you wouldn't normally otherwise focus on. What does that do? That creates a little bit of tension, just a little bit. And when you create a little bit of tension right before a chord change, for example, let's say A7 is our 1 chord, D7 is going to be our 4 chord in our blues. So we might want to do this in that bar right before we go to the 4 chord, and you're going to find that that's exactly what we're going to be doing, okay? So if we look at the first lick that I have for you, we're going to do an E minor 7 arpeggio. So my pinky on the E at the 7th fret of the 5th string, my middle finger at the G of the 5th fret of the 4th string, my index finger at the 4th fret B on the 3rd string, then I'll get the D at the 7th fret, and then the E at the 2nd fret of the 5th fret of the 2nd string. So that is my E minor 7 arpeggio. If you've never played an E minor 7 arpeggio, now you have. Cool. You learned something new today. Don't worry if you've never played it before, that's what it is. And then from there, I'm going to come down my minor pentatonic scale. So if you can imagine, box 1. So the D, the C, the A, and the G. And then I'm going to go to an F sharp, which is at the 4th fret of the 4th string. Why? Well, I'm thinking about a D7 chord. So a D7 chord would be root here at the D of the 5th fret of the 5th string. F sharp is the 3rd. A, D, C as well. And all of these notes, the F sharp at the 4th fret of the 4th string, the D at the 7th fret of the 3rd string, and the C at the 5th fret of the 3rd string are all just chord tones. And I'm not thinking of them in any other way. I'm not thinking of them as some, magic scale or magic whatever. It's just notes out of the chord. And that's just a nice, easy sound. So now if I put this in time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you play that by itself, it doesn't always sound that interesting. Okay, what makes lines like this really work is to play them against some chords. So let's put some chords into the looper, and then when you can hear how the line works against the chords, it makes a lot more sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, and then the D7. 2 bars of each. All right, here we go into the looper. 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so now if I go back and I start playing my lick, here's the D7. Three, 4, oh. Right? Sounds kind of cool. It's a nice thing. If I play some minor, it gives us kind of a neat little twist. Okay, so why does that work? Well, this is the, remember we have an A7 chord. So that's the 5th of the chord, that's the flatted 7th of the chord, but that's the 9th of the chord. That's the 11th of the chord, and then back to the 5th. So we're sort of highlighting the 2nd and the 9th of the chord, and that's just something that we don't normally do, right? If we play our major pentatonic or our major blues sound, we get, you can get the 9th, but it's not normally what you'll gravitate towards. And you can get the 11th from the minor blues sound, but again, it's not the note that you're going to tend to gravitate towards. So it's going to tweak your ear just a little bit. But what's nice about it is that when we do that, and then we come back, and we land on that F sharp, we've sort of resolved that tension, okay? Creating tension is really, really important in your solos. But if you create tension and then you don't resolve it, it tends to just sound wrong. To not put too fine a point on it, it sounds like you made a mistake. If you create tension and then resolve it, and I've talked about that in many other videos, but if you create tension and you resolve it properly in a way that makes it very easy to absorb for your listener, it sounds great. Okay, so one more time, let's just kind of play this. Let's play it over the jam track. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the D. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Here we go. All right, so that's fun. Let's take a look at another option. All right, so now what we're doing is, again, I'm taking a G major 7th arpeggio. This is the other thing that I said I could do. So if I'm on A, there's an A there at the 7th fret of the 4th string. There's a G there at the 5th fret of the 4th string. So I'm going to start with the note a half step below it, the F sharp. This works in two ways. It's kind of a half step lead in to the root, but it's also the 7th of the chord, which is part of the arpeggio. So it's like I'm playing the arpeggio starting from the 7th. F sharp to G to B to D. Now all of that, notice G, B, D, you played in the last arpeggio. E minor 7 and G major 7 are very, very closely related. So we have F sharp, G, B, D, but then we're going to kind of do a little finger roll. Now, you can do this with your 3rd finger or your pinky, however you want, to go from D to F sharp and then back to D. I tend to use my 3rd finger, so I make a little jump. And then what I'm going to do is after the F sharp comes back to the D, I'm just going to play A major blues. There's the E, and I'm going to do a little hammer on to the C sharp, from the C to the C sharp, and then a little rest, and then my A, and then I'm going to hit the C for the D7 chord. That's a good note because it's part of the D7 chord. It's also part of the A minor blues scale, right? So, you know, it's our typical thing when we get to the 4 chord, we're just going back to the A minor blues. And I haven't written much. You could obviously, you know, take that as far as you want. So in time, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2. One more time. 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And again, you could, you know, keep going with that. Don't feel like you have to stop there. If we again play it over our loop, 2, 3, 4. And you can hear how it really goes with the chord nicely. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so there's lots of things I can do. I don't have to stop right there. And hopefully you kind of see that you can, you know, you just have to get this idea in there at that time, okay? Now, again, why does this work? Well, from the A, the first note of that lick is the 13th of the chord, the 6th, right? So we have the 6th, the flat 7, 9, 11, and 13. So again, we're accenting all of these notes that are not normally the ones we would go after. They're still in the key, Okay, they still belong with an A7 chord. There's nothing outside, there's nothing weird, there's nothing strange going on, but it does sound a little bit different. And that's cool. You know, it's nice to have kind of a slightly different sound. Now, admittedly, I prefer the G major 7. I do use the E minor 7 a lot as well. One of the other patterns of the E minor 7, if you happen to know that, you know, you can do that. You can even use an E minor pentatonic scale over an A7 chord. You can take that further if you want. But for right now, I just kind of want to, you know, introduce the sound. I know that for some folks, you know, it's a little bit outside the traditional blues, but it's becoming more and more and more and more commonplace. Like I say, you know, I hear Matt Schofield do this all the time. I think in darn near every solo of his that I've ever heard, he uses this device. Larry Carlton, of course. But even going back to guys like Lonnie Johnson, and you may not be familiar with Lonnie Johnson's music so much, but back in the 40s and the 50s, he recorded a ton of stuff. T-Bone Walker, you'll hear this in their playing. It's just kind of buried in there. But it does come out once in a while. And more modern players, Robben Ford, Larry Carlton, Matt Schofield, Josh Smith, a lot of these guys are using it more, but it's not like it's brand new. So I hope that makes sense. All right, so try and mess around with these a little bit. Record a little jam track for yourself. I'm gonna, you know, try and leave a PDF of the licks nearby, but of course you can get them on the screen. Play around with it a little bit. It's a great sound. Use it on the 4th bar of the 12th bar phrase right before you're going to go to the 4 chord. Try and get it under your fingers. I think it's a sound you really enjoy. And I'm Griff Hamlin from Blues Guitar Unleashed. I will talk to you soon. Take care.